we all get settled again in our seats. No more music for a while. Keep those tunes in your head. And it's a pleasure to welcome back to our fellowship Chaplain Jesse Ford, who was our intern to this teaching congregation for 18 months. Jesse took a hiatus, but we've contracted with Jesse to come back and give us a few good sermons. And I think this might be the start of a few good sermons. We're going to hear from Chaplain Jesse and her entourage. So, not that I need you to applaud her welcoming forward, but you might just do one of these. Just a simple yay. Chaplain Jesse Ford. I wish I could snap my fingers.
Thank you so much, Sally. So, how many here believe that you can change the world with your love?
Yes.
Okay. A fair number. And as Dr. Cornel West famously said, justice is what love looks like in public. Okay? We are traveling a long road through a hard night, friends, as we continue to advocate for a shift from greed to giving. Hello, when was that hymn written? Okay. Could have been any time in the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century, really. Let us strive to be guided by love through this. And let us open our hearts to receive that love also, to be guided by. So, happy Pride. Happy Pride. I am now, as Sally mentioned, but I'm going to expand it a little, one of this fellowship's, count them, 4 contract ministers. Okay. So this week, this month, we are celebrating Pride, which is the alphabet soup of LGBTQIAA2S++, gender identities and affectional preferences. Now, what does that mean? Gender identity. Those are different, right? Gender identities. A gender identity is how I feel inside of myself. And for me, I can't tell you from moment to moment where I'm going to be on the spectrum of that gender identity in any given next moment. It just changes. Affectional preferences has to do with who you, as a particularly shaped body, choose to be partnered with, or maybe are just simply attracted to. Okay? So there are 2 different things. One is how you feel, and one is who you are attracted to and how that relates to how you feel inside. And you can understand why some people just say, it's too confusing, I'm queer. Okay, we'll get to that later. Pride is important because every single one of those letters has a long, long history of being totally diminished by shame in our dominant Western culture. Also, most of those letters have also been used as an excuse for violence against lettered people, as I will start calling us, the people of the letters, okay? Both individually and as a matter of state harassment and exclusion, suspension of individual rights conferred on conforming members of society, okay? And that's an important word, conforming. All of these letters represent ways of not conforming to the norms of gender identity and affectional preference established in this country by Christian, I'm just going to say it, empire, Christian empire. And now apparently changing the rules of biology by proclaiming that there are only 2 sexes, which anybody who knows anything about anything knows is scientifically incorrect, actually. So the term queer is in particular a declaration of nonconformance. It used to be an insult, you queer. Its adoption by the lettered community is essentially a heck yeah. Not only do we not conform, we assert that distorting one's identity, whether as a mask or an internal process of trying to somehow re-architect yourself, is basically unhealthy. So yeah, we're queer, because we're not going to do that. And so we choose to stay with our true colors. Our true colors. And back in the day when we were all still deeply closeted, it was a matter of, what's the word I want to use? It's a compliment to share the reality of your true colors with people who are of the dominant culture, and happily so. There are no conflicts, there are no internal conflicts, and oh, would it be so for all of us, right? So when we choose to show you our true colors, know that it's not because we're not afraid. It's because we choose to do that despite fear. Despite fear. We choose to stand up. We choose to be visible. Many of us can pass, probably most of us, if we choose to. But we choose not to, because we don't think it's healthy. It has distorted our internal personhood. So I would encourage you, as you talk to your circles, your various circles about these matters, and I hope you do, to point this out, and to point out that it's actually kind of a compliment to those of the happily dominant culture to say, okay, this is who we are too. And that gives us so much possibility. Now, affirming welcome is an intrinsic part of our fundamental Unitarian Universalist values, right? This is a religious value for us. And we, out loud and proud Unitarian Universalists, embrace the sacredness of every body, right? Because this is a very embodied, we're in a very embodied time, you know. Your body doesn't conform. Oh, maybe it's the color of your body that doesn't conform. Oh, maybe it's the hair. Oh, maybe it's the piercings or the tattoos. Or maybe it's, you don't look like a fill in the blank to me. It's like, Unitarian Universalists, we are working to affirm that y'all, everybody, is welcome in the body they have and choose to present, in the identity they choose to present. We celebrate the diversity of bodies on all of these axes, including every aspect of born to and in the moment physical and mental ability, including every age, every skill, and every gift. And this month we particularly honor and lift up every body's sacred autonomy, the right to make choices about how people use their bodies, to choose their expression of gender, the right to choose their expression of affectional preference, however the body is constructed, adorned, or presented in public or in private, okay? And here, today, at the Florence Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, we are particularly celebrating our trans, intersex, and non-binary brethren. Why are we doing that? Because we're under attack. Those folks, of whom I happen to be one, quite to my surprise, are really being targeted. And make no mistake about it. I mean, other people are being targeted too. There are people in this community who have been removed to God knows where.
Yeah.
Suddenly, apart from their families, it's like, where have they gone even? We don't know. How are they being treated? Well, we don't know, but we suspect, right? These are the first. Don't presume that you are not going to be next, because study history, okay? So when I say to you, happy Pride, what do I mean by that? Outside of complimenting your garish eyeshadow and lovely lays, your beautiful red dresses, or purple dresses, or blue shirts, or maroon, that's the word I'm looking for, maroon shirts. Yeah, your purples and your plaids and your, all of it. But just 4 days ago, the Supreme Court voted 6-3 to uphold Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for minors, the Skermeti case. So how can I be standing here saying to you, happy Pride? How can I do that? The Skermeti decision endangers lives, it strips rights, and it sends an unmistakable message to trans people, especially trans youth, that you are not entitled to the care you need to survive and thrive. Why are we so concerned about kids? Because puberty is all about hormones, and hormones matter, as even those of us with gray hair or no hair might remember. Hormones matter, right? And I don't know about guys, but for women, hormones matter at the beginning and then again in the 40s and 50s, and it's like, oh my God, here we go again. I'm crazy, don't mind me. Okay, so, and it's so ironic, because we are just in a time in the world when medical technology has finally figured out a way to provide relief for millions of people who do not and cannot conform to the incorrect science that pretends there's only two genders. That same medical technology, by deliberate action of the state, has been decreed off limits for humans that are perhaps at their most sensitive point of development. That's criminal, I would say, morally. Requiring a puberty that's out of alignment with one's inner self is not just unjust, it's cruel. It's cruel. And deliberately so. And not only for the particular humans, but for their entire web of relationships. They're all affected. However, I'm going to say but and so. For generations, Unitarian Universalism has advocated for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people, for gender equity, and for reproductive justice, and we are not standing down on any of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Yes. Yes. Let's do this. So happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
We proclaim and advocate for sanctuary where we can all dream in safety. So happy Pride.
Happy
Pride.
And we are learning, in the words of Leela Sinha, to practice pushing the heavy stone of oppression while not allowing that stone to be the thing that unites us, because it isn't. What unites us is the fabulosity of human diversity. It's like, yeah, oh, there's that, and there's that, and there's that. I can't tell you how many meetings I go to, especially with people that are a great deal younger than myself, who come up with ideas that never in a million years would I have thought of. And it's like, and they're all doing it. I'm just standing there watching, saying, can I get you some coffee? What unites us as a faith community is love. That is central to our faith, and that doesn't mean an anemic, like, oh, I love you today. Love is hard. Love is hard. It's hard to love people that you disagree with and people whose shoes you hate, and things like that. It's hard. I mean, it can be. I'm sort of making light of it, but you get it. It's not easy. We work to be better at it. It's a bit aspirational, but it's also true. Love is at the core. And our metric for are we doing this right is, are we doing this in love? Are we being kind? Are we being inclusive? Is everybody's voice being heard? Is everybody at the table who needs to be? That's us. So happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Right. Finally, as we have heard this week from Reverend Connie Simon, and by that I mean in our annual meetings, which are online if you're not there, thousands of UUs are gathered in Baltimore right now. Liberal religion is not a spectator sport. Okay? It's not like, oh yeah, those are great ideas. Period. I mean, there is maybe a period, but a comma would be sort of more inviting in a few ways. We, as a faith community, have an unshakable faith in the human potential for growth. And that doesn't just mean you, it means me as well, which is even scarier sometimes, okay? We believe that heaven and hell can and do exist right here, right now, and we make it so. So, what are we going to choose? We choose to channel our energies into dreaming, inviting, advocating, working to expand heaven's reach in this material world. What do we want? What would heaven be like? What would it be like? Can we build that? Can we build that? Oh, can we help somebody not have to sleep in the rain? Man, that'd be creating a little bit of heaven, wouldn't it? Can we let our representatives know what we're thinking? Because in case they don't know, maybe they'll get 736 million letters, and then they will. Whatever kinds of stubborn, unexpected, antic, I'm going to say even mischievous in a good way, not causing harm to anybody, but being really unexpected, really playful even sometimes, nonviolent acts of love, grace, and even humor that we are led to by those with whom we're in solidarity. So, with these thoughts and minds, and understanding that hearing one another's stories is part of how we co-create the world intentionally, joyfully, welcomingly, and inclusively, the world we yearn for, hearing one another's stories. I want to say that we're honored to have with us today Tom Gewirtz and Heidi Jarman. And Tom is going to come and tell you some stories about Tom's life. So please welcome Tom Gewirtz.
It would be nice to be taller. Hello, thank you for being here and for listening. So I am a transgender man. I am now 65, tomorrow 66. But I didn't transition to male until I was 50. About slow blooming, late bloomers. I was a late bloomer. As far as the actual transition. However, when I was 5 years old, I had, my eyes were open. I just woke up one morning as a 5-year-old, and I had this huge level of awareness where I was like, I'm Tom Cowboy. So I looked female. I was identified as female at birth, But at 5 years old, I had a level of clarity that I don't remember having about anything else until that moment that I was Tom Cowboy. And not Cowboy Tom, it was Tom Cowboy. And I went to my parents' room and I told them I am Tom Cowboy. And my parents were like, oh, that's nice, honey. And my dad said to my mom, put her in more dresses. And that's better than things he could have said, but I pretty much stuffed that back down. Like, well, okay, I am, but I'm not going to talk about it. And I stuffed it for a very long time with, moments of awareness and wondering, but it clearly wasn't very safe to be Tom Cowboy in my world. It wasn't even, honestly, my, people call it their dead name. I don't really like that term, but that means your former name that you no longer use, but I'm going to use it today because my dead name was Lauren Ann, and at 12, I felt the courage to say to my dad, I'm going by Lauren, and he said, no, you're not, I named you Lauren Ann. So I couldn't even get rid of Ann when it came to my father. So everybody else they call me Lauren, but if you can't even switch from Lauren Ann to Lauren, you can certainly not switch to Tom Cowboy. So just ask me how and when and how did I know who I was besides being 5? The next big time, when I figured out I am male, I just don't look that way, was actually when I was 49. My beloved Rivka said to me just before Thanksgiving week, she's the one that gave me the courage to examine my true self. I had lived with anxiety for a very long time, and I was seeing my rabbi about that anxiety and so forth. But she's the one that said, how about you live as Tom Cowboy for 1 week? And I'm a school teacher, and it was Thanksgiving week, so I had extra days that, I wouldn't be going to school, so it was especially a good time. And I was like, I could do that? I could be Tom Cowboy for a week? No one had ever, suggested that before. And it blew my socks off. And I felt exhilarated and this deep happiness that I could do this. And this may make you a little uncomfortable. I'm not meaning to, but at one point when I was changing my clothes, I was naked. And I looked in the mirror and I saw Tom Cowboy. And I just, was, wow, I like my body now. Where before I would hide it. I would not like my body. And not to the point of some people, but enough that I definitely had dysphoria. It was not who I was inside. And I was so happy with this and grounded and calm with allowing myself to live as Tom Cowboy. Wear what I wanted to wear. She would call me Tom and so forth. That at one point, honestly, during that week, she had to go to the hospital. Was it your appendix? To have her appendix removed. And she had been in the hospital before for other issues. And I was, a good partner. We'd been together since we were early 30s, and here I was 49. But, I was female when she went feeling female. Presenting female, thinking I was female-ish, when she was in the hospital before that. And when I would we had a congregation that brought food, would bring food to us. And I would be sure that happened. My mom that raised me said, you should be doing cooking. You should be cooking the food. It's not enough to get the food brought to you. You're a female, cook the food. And I'm like, why? I just didn't get it. But so here we were. I was being Tom Cowboy, and Rivka was in the hospital, And I had this, I still got people to bring the food. So that didn't change. But I was able to be, is that a phone?
That's great background music.
I was able to be more present and more giving and more loving and didn't hold back. I mean, it wasn't, of course, before on purpose holding back from being my full self for Rivka, but by being Tom Cowboy, I was able to be present and loving in a way I had never been before, just by being my true self, allowing myself internally. Obviously, nothing had changed on the outside, other than I was wearing the clothes I wanted to wear. I was able to give myself more fully, which is a big piece that Jesse was, I think, alluding to on some level. When people are living as their true selves, they can give more to the whole community. When you're spending part of your energy hiding who you are and worried what people are going to say, you just don't have that energy. So it opened up energy and love that I could give Rivka that I hadn't done before. I also figured out who I was through books I read. Becoming a Visible Man by Jamison Green is a favorite. I saw the first photograph of a trans man, a man who had transitioned to me, and I was like, he totally passed, which helped me to realize that was possible. I did have top and bottom surgery. At first, when I started testosterone, of course, there were changes that I knew were right. When I had my surgeries, I had changes, big changes, that I knew were right, because then I could actually see myself in the mirror as I felt on the inside. So those were big pieces along the way and how I knew who I was. By the way, when I chose my name, like I said, I just knew at 5 I'm Tom Cowboy. I didn't know what Tom meant. But when I went to make my final decision, when I actually decided to officially transition at 50, I looked at names and I looked up Tom. Well, Thomas, which people sometimes call me Thomas, I'm like, that means palm tree. Like, woo! Tom, in Hebrew, and I'm Jewish, means pure and innocent. And in Aramaic, it means whole and complete. So it was like, yeah, that's the name. That works for me. So Jesse asked, what makes me joyous as a transgender man? And number one, of course, is being seen on the outside, how I've felt forever on the inside. Number one. Next. Well, this is private, but we're talking about private things, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. But sexually, my honey treats me as male instead of as female, and that is the right fit. I don't have the dysphoria getting in the way and making me feel vulnerable and wanting to just hide under the covers. We're able to fully be together in an intimate way, in a way that makes us both happy. I don't have the panic that I used to have when I was female and we were trying to be intimate. Also, another plus is there are fewer obstacles to, as a heterosexual person, I can fully love my honey in public, give her a little kiss, and no one's like, oh, what are those little women doing, So yes, I was a lesbian first, and now I'm a heterosexual man, so that's handy, but that's not why I transitioned, just so you know. Another thing was, when we decided to have a child, before we actually went through the process, which we did through in vitro, I said to Rivka, I want you to know, I do not see myself as a mommy. And this was before the transition. This was way before the actual being 49. This was when we were in like 39, about 39, 38. I said, I want to be sure you know, I do not see myself as a mommy. I see myself as a daddy. And she's like, oh, that's cool, I'm the mommy, so we got that covered. And when I was 49, our child was 10. And I, of course, needed to come out to my child that I was going to do this. And when I told them that one of their parents, there's actually the three of us because there's our sperm donor. I was the egg donor. I didn't say that part earlier. We have a dear friend, now family, who was a sperm donor, and Rivka carried our baby. So I really got to have my beloved, give birth to our child. But the funny thing was when I said to Lior that, well, one of your parents is going to transition, her first response was, well, it's not daddy, is it? God forbid they have three mothers. Two was enough. Like, no, honey, it's not. Your daddy is still your daddy, but I am becoming your dad. And Lior's response was, well, you've always been my dad. So I'm like, okay, check that box off. We're good. So, so part of being presenting as male as well as I do is I do have male privilege now. One of the painful things that happened while I looked female, an example, and many female people in this room, female-bodied people, female living people probably can attest to. I was not only female, but petite, which of course is still petite, but I had a principal. I'm a grade school teacher. I was studying to become an administrator. I have my administrative license. And while I was studying under this principal, he said he would mentor me. At one point he said, your communication is too direct. It's English. I'm like, well, I am English, but what are you talking about? He said, you should be more like my vice principal. She, in effect, walks 2 steps behind me and talks when she's spoken to. And how many of you have experienced something like that where you've been told, be less than yourself? Yeah. So that doesn't happen anymore. So that's the good news. That's a part of being of male privilege. A painful thing is, as far as my transition, was I did lose some dear friends. They just couldn't cope, and I still don't understand it, honestly. But I'm grateful to say I only lost 3, where we have a lot of people in our lives, between our congregation and my friends. There's probably hundreds of dear friends who are still there, and many closer than ever, because now I am my true self. I can give up myself fully. I did lose my trained soprano voice, but I'm working on a baritone, and that's okay with me. So, how to support folks like me? Excuse me. How many of you have heard of the platinum rule? So how many of you have heard of the golden rule? Okay, so there are a few of us in the room who have heard of the platinum rule. My understanding of it is treat people as they want to be treated. So golden rule, of course, is how you would want to be treated. But it is a whole nother level, of course. Treat people how they want to be treated. So my number one piece of advice, if you want to connect with transgender folks, and anybody really, is treat them how they want to be treated. So yes, it does mean you're going to have some conversations. And they might be awkward conversations. But ultimately, you will be closer than ever if you can find out how they want to be treated, and then that's what you do. Next, don't assume. How many of you have heard that assuming means you're making an ass of you and me? Yes, don't assume someone is transgender one way or the other. Okay, stop, look, listen. If you feel comfortable and it's a private situation, ask if you want to. But don't assume someone is or isn't transgender. I pass well now. I didn't for a while. But just don't assume one way or the other. Next, please make the effort with names and pronouns. Rivka, she didn't transition. She just became Jewish, which is still a big deal. But her sisters used to call her by her Hebrew name, Rivka, because it's just too much effort. So they still call her Terry. She's born Teresa Anne Marie, very Catholic. But eventually became converted to Judaism and goes by Rivka. It's her Hebrew name stuck. And there's still people who are like, that's too much effort, you know. But, and that's not even about transition. I mean, you know, to genders. So make the effort to learn and use people's names and their pronouns. So our child is non-binary and prefers they pronouns, which was honestly hard for us too. And it's a little embarrassing. We're as liberal as people as we've ever met. And then we have a non-binary child and we're like, what does that mean? And is it a phase? Oh my God, did I hear that in my head? I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that, is it a phase? But we didn't know. And being non-binary has different terms, and there's different terms and different, you know, that's all evolving. But calling our child they, using they pronouns was tough. It was honestly tough. The thing that made it easier, if I may say, is, as you know, we did in vitro, and we implanted 2 embryos, and one stuck and one didn't. And something we learned years later is when that happens, the second embryo is absorbed into the first embryo. So in fact, Leor is a they. They are made up of 2 embryos, one that was absorbed by the other one. That made it a little easier to call them they, to use they pronouns. And we are still, how many years later now? 10 years later, reminding each other, use they. So it takes effort, even when you're parents and you have the best of intentions, but the efforts pay off. And remind other people, just subtly, you know, they say she, blah, 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 just say they, and just go on. Doesn't need to be a big deal. My sister still doesn't like that I do that, but you know, she'll get over it. And she use the pronouns people want. Next. So as I said, I'm a teacher, grade school teacher. I actually write currently kindergarten through 8th grade PE teacher. And I have a 8th grader who uses they pronouns. Well, when it came time to write up a certificate for the promotion from 8th grade to high school, I realized I didn't know, they had told me they want they pronouns with me. But what I realized I needed to do is, do you want they pronouns on your certificate? When I'm announcing to the families, are you okay I use they pronouns? What about, with other staff? So especially with their guardians, what's the most key piece? Find out, don't assume the parents know or don't know. And lastly, please continue to work or start working to change policies so that this world is a safer place for all people who are transgender of any variation. Thank you so much.
Tom, thank you from the bottom of my queer heart. So, Heidi, do you have any comments you would like to add at this point, or do you want to join us for the discussion circle, or?
I can share a little bit.
Okay, come on up. This is Heidi Jarman. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are.
Great. And she's local here in Florence. I will let her introduce herself also.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, here, let me take that.
You don't need to step on it.
Oh, you got it?
I think I got it. I'm super excited that this fellowship is acknowledging and celebrating pride. I think that is honestly such a welcome, heartwarming thing in our society and community. I was raised in a very Christian family. It was just what we did, I don't know, 2 to 3 times a week, go to church. So I completely have understanding of how many people think, because I was raised in it. It wasn't until my mid-20s I started not feeling so comfortable with everything that I had been taught. So I'm a nurse. I went to nursing school straight out of my second year of college, and I went to Oregon State, or Oregon Health Sciences University up in Portland. And I've always been very open and curious about people and their experiences. And in my senior year, I had the opportunity to work and choose a patient as like your, I forget what it's called, but you write a care plan and you spend time with an individual, and this person was there for gender transition. And so I was very welcoming, got to spend time, interview this person, read books, and so became, aware. So I don't think I'd really been aware of many, it just wasn't really visible in the 90s, I guess. So here we are now. I've had 2 children, was raised in Mapleton, came from the Bay Area. My parents wanted to get us out of the Bay Area, and we moved back when we had 2 kids. So my first child was born biologically male, and then second child 3 years later, female, and they were raised pretty much from, 3-4 years on up here in this area. And my oldest child, at just kind of after the pandemic hit and things shut down and they were gonna go off to college, and we decided not to send them to sit in a dorm room and do online school. They were enrolled in school online, and things just kind of started to unravel. So Jonah, at the time, I also knew that they were on the spectrum. As a mother, they've always just kind of struggled a lot in some areas, but then were very gifted and talented in other areas. And socially was one area that they tended to kind of, push the limits of kind of what was socially acceptable, I guess, and I could just see them struggling through their childhood, but we always just encouraged them and let them be them. But all through their childhood, and kind of like Tom's story, my understanding of transgender was through the story of you know this from a young age, or the parents might pick up on clues, and that was kind of my understanding of what trans meant. So when Jonah had already kind of like started struggling with a lot of other areas in their life, they thought they were autistic, and we knew they were on the spectrum, and we did psychological testing, and they came up with ADHD. So basically they're neurodivergent, and their brain works differently than many of our brains work. But about a year after high school, they were struggling a lot, and we didn't really know what the issue was, and they finally said they were experiencing gender dysphoria. And that was just a real shock to my husband and I, but you love your child and you want to help them. And we were just, okay, what are we going to do? And just started reaching out for resources, therapists, and we'd already had kind of some interaction with mental health practitioners, but that had never come up before until this. So we just immediately started like getting resources. Let's see. So much has happened, but essentially because of the pandemic, the isolation, the gender dysphoria, her whole peer group had gone off. She was just struggling physically too with, sleeping, eating, fear of going outside, very in tune politically. She struggled a lot, and I actually took 5 months off of work to essentially caretake for her because she was struggling so much, including attempts at taking her life. So, I'm happy to report that Jen, who came up with that name, and now she goes by Jira, but I generally call her Jen because we've, it's hard to go through 2 name changes, right? Yeah, it's been a long, hard road. But she has grown into having friendships, and has gotten out into the community. We do pottery together. She finally felt confident enough to have a job last fall, so she's been working at Tama now, so if you order pizza, you might meet Jira. But I guess what I'd like to say as a fellow human is, we're so conditioned to name and categorize everything in nature, right? But the bottom line is we're human, and to love and support no matter how we present, like, sure, I still struggle because she doesn't fit all the same stereotypes as a female. But I love my child, and I'm going to support them in what makes them feel loved and supported.
Wow.
So, kind of another interesting note, in the department that I work in the hospital, at the same time, there were probably 5 other nurses whose children were also experiencing change and exploration. So, yeah, I imagine all of you probably know or have heard of, because it's quite common. And I don't know how many people know, but people that are neurodivergent, autistic or ADHD, their view of themselves and their identity is often not aligned with, physical characteristics. There's a higher incidence of trans, non-binary in that population, so. Anyhow, that's kind of my story.
Wow.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so
I'll just remind you that we do have a discussion circle after you have after we break, after the peace song, grab some coffee or tea, and we'll have a circle in here, and both Heidi and Tom have agreed to stay to be part of that. Thank you both, and thank you both for sharing.
Yeah.
This is really wonderful. now, a little musical break. Musical break.
It'll come.